All right. Welcome to Coaching Yourself to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. Today, we're going to be talking about the tricycle effect and why it matters in order to be able to overcome imposter syndrome. So, first of all, think back to when you first learned to ride a bike, right? Probably brings back a lot of good memories. Chances are you didn't start on a two-wheel bike right away, did you? Your parents and your caregivers didn't just hand you a bike and say, hey, good luck. Instead, they started you on a tricycle because you needed to first develop the strength, the coordination, and the confidence to balance before moving to a two-wheel bike. Am I right? Well, from the tricycle, you gradually progressed maybe to a bike with training wheels, where you learn to balance while still having some support. Then finally, you moved to a two-wheel bike. And even after all that preparation, you and I both probably still fell a few times, didn't we? Leadership, entrepreneurship, and personal growth work exactly the same way. Too many of us expect ourselves to jump straight into the two wheel bike experience with success without first developing the foundation that will guide us steady. But just like the experience of riding a bike, leadership requires a process, a whole system of gradual growth, leadership, self leadership, and resilience. And that's why I created the Tricycle Effect, a framework for character driven leadership and the foundation of my book, Coachability, where we're coaching character as the foundation of leadership. So let me give you an example of how that tricycle effect is painted for you so you can understand it really well. When I'm done painting this picture of the tricycle, you will never forget it. So we all are just big kids, right? Have the same personality we had when we were 3 to 5 years old. Now that we're older, we can make it look a little different, maybe put on a facade, fake some things, make it look like we're doing a lot better than maybe we are. But our personality is still the same as it was when we were 3 to 5. And as an adult, we're just big kids. But the difference is that character and personality are not the same thing at all. Personality is something we have from birth, right? We grew up with that. By the time we're 3 to 5, it's pretty well developed. But our character skills can be developed. And I call them character skills on purpose, right? So let me paint this picture of the tricycle for you. The front wheel of the tricycle is the character skills wheel. So, every wheel that we have, whether it's on a car or a bike, has spokes on it. Those spokes are supposed to give the wheel some kind of firmness, steady ride, and it gives that wheel the roundedness that it has. It doesn't wobble then, right? And it's a smooth ride. Well, that front character skill wheel comprised of things like integrity, resilience, trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, empathy, loyalty, integrity, and so much more. The back two wheels are much smaller, right? But they're the same size. One is the technical skill wheel. So, for example, can you bake a cake? Can you drive a car? Can you write a letter, right? The other wheel is what I call the people skills wheel. And the people skills are comprised of things like leadership, communication, teamwork, relational skills, right? So we need those two skills together, technical and people skills, to be competent in life. So I call those two back skill wheels the competence skills wheels. And then, of course, the seat on the tricycle is what I call the seat of courage. That's where it kind of all comes together. Courage is what allows us to keep pedaling forward, even if we're scared or uncertain or facing failure, right? We've got to have the courage to make conscious decision to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. So before we can coach ourselves, before we can actually overcome what I call imposter syndrome, and lots of people know what that is, before we can lead our businesses, we must first lead ourselves with character. Just like how we needed a tricycle before we could master a two-wheel bike, we have to really get a handle on the foundation of leadership with those character skills before we can actually drive home that leadership and influence for ourselves, our businesses, our families, and those that we influence outside of our business. So the challenge that we've got today is growing a business, right? And really, if we think about it and we step back a little bit, it's not just growing your business, but it's growing yourself first. And since character is the foundation of leadership, If we're leading ourselves and growing in a business, we have to be able to first grow ourselves in character, right? So I want to share this personal story of a gymnast I had. One day when I was coaching a young gymnast on a very difficult skill, they were up at a high bar, probably at about 8 or 9 feet. And I'd been spotting her for a while on this particular skill. I was barely touching her in the last couple of days that I'd been spotting with her. She was doing most of the work by herself. So I asked her, "Can't you just believe you can do the skill? I'm hardly spotting you anymore." And she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "That would be a lie." Imagine that. She turned to me and said, "That would be a lie." Well, in her mind, believing in herself before she had done the skill completely on her own felt dishonest. And that would be a lie. And she wasn't going to tell herself a lie. Therefore, she couldn't actually believe it. She was experiencing what we call imposter syndrome, the belief that because she hadn't fully proven herself or she hadn't done it yet on her own, she wasn't capable. Now, let me ask you this question. How many of us feel the same way in leadership, business, or life, right? Imposter syndrome whispers in our ear, "I'm not a real leader because I haven't reached that level," or "I'm not at the top of the company in a position where there's a leadership position that is a formal leadership position," right? "I can't say I'm successful because I haven't made enough money yet," or "I don't deserve this opportunity." But here's the real truth. Every leader, every entrepreneur, every successful person started before they were ready. They took that first step before they could get to the end of the journey, right? They weren't imposters. They were just getting started on their journey and journeying to their destination. And that journey requires courage, the courage to lead ourselves first, right? So, how do you develop those character skills to beat the imposter syndrome? That's the big question. The reason so many of us struggle with imposter syndrome, I think, isn't because we lack skills or experience. It's because we don't trust ourselves. To overcome self doubt, we must start by coaching ourselves with character first. Sometimes the reason we don't trust ourselves is because we're comparing ourselves to other people and they look more successful than we feel. We spend so much time, all's well, on being kind and respectful, caring and trusting others, yet we rarely show ourselves the same character skill. Many times we're harder on ourselves than we are on others. Wouldn't you agree? We extend grace, patience, encouragement to friends, colleagues, and even strangers, yet we hold ourselves to impossible standards. We replay our failures all the time. We dwell on shortcomings and tell ourselves we're not good enough, when in reality, we are simply still learning and growing. So here's an action step for you to start coaching yourself with character. If you want to overcome the imposter syndrome and start leading yourself like you would lead others with your character skills first, think of these four things. Number one, be kind to yourself. Speak to yourself with the same encouragement you give others. Have you ever thought about the fact that every day you speak more to yourself than to anyone else? Number two, respect yourself. Acknowledge your efforts and celebrate small wins. You'd be amazed at how celebrating a small win boosts your confidence and your emotional well being. Number three, care for yourself. Prioritize your self care, get some time to yourself, make sure you're putting personal growth as a priority and emotional well being. And number four, trust yourself. Stop guessing those instincts that you have. Your experiences have made you capable. So when you develop these character skills internally, you'll gain the confidence to lead externally. It's almost like this transformation in your life, right? So, how to overcome imposter syndrome and lead with courage? I have 5 different actions you can take to actually overcome imposter syndrome, lead with courage, and become a better leader that's leading with character first. Number 1, and this is a biggie, add the word yet to your thinking. You hear yourself say, for instance, "I can't do this." Stop immediately. Finish the sentence with yet. As a result, instead you'll say, instead of saying, "I just can't do this," you'll say, "I can't do this yet," which means that it's not a dead end. you can still work with it. And as a result, you're going to feel immediate relaxation in your mind, your spirit, and your soul. You will immediately experience that relaxation, making you feel free to continue the journey. So, what's an action step you can do in order to add the word yet to your thinking? One is write down 3 things you feel you can't do. Right now, go ahead. Write down 3 things you feel you can't do. All right. Once you have those written down, then add the word yet at the end of each sentence. It doesn't matter what the sentence is, right? Just add the word yet. And then read them out loud every morning. I haven't earned $5,000 per month yet. I haven't been able to get my business started yet, right? So those are the things that allow you the freedom to be able to run at your own pace, be true to yourself, be authentic and genuine, and have fun in the journey at the same time. All right, number 2, trust the process. Focus on systems, not goals. It's an amazing thing that the winningest basketball coaches in the United States ever have actually gone on record and said, we don't focus on goals. We focus on systems. If we get good at our systems, the goals will happen. We say that all the time to the gymnastics athletes in our gym. Hey, if you focus on hitting your routines, you practice like you're going to compete, you will do really, really well. When you go to a competition, it's just a tough practice, or it's just an easy practice actually. So focus on the systems and not the goals. And to really bring that home, I want to emphasize Nick Foles, the quarterback of the Eagles in 2018 at the Super Bowl. And it's really funny that right now the Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl. So this is a great time to really bring Nick Foles' presentation that he did for his news conference after the Super Bowl, because he focused on trusting the process as well and not putting time pressure on yourself. So in the time that he was talking, he could have said, well, we made some really great passes. The offensive line really blocked well for me, or the defensive line really stopped the offense on the other competition, whatever it happened to be, right? But he didn't go into any of that. He talked about the fact that we all have struggles. And when you have a struggle, embrace it because you know you're growing. At a national news conference, having just won the Super Bowl, having been the most valuable player chosen for that Super Bowl, he decides to talk about how many times he has fallen down, thousands, and that he struggles every day, but he hasn't given up. He's been consistent. And to think that that's just words, but actually, he sat on the bench as a second string quarterback for several years, I believe, behind Carson Wentz, who happened to get injured 2 weeks before the Super Bowl in 2018. So Nick had to come up to first level quarterback and lead the team to the Super Bowl championship. And he did that. So here he is, sat on second bench all this time, learning from Carson Wentz, being patient, being consistent, still practicing all those things that he needed to. So when the time came, he was ready, right? He had been focusing on the systems and not the goals. So here's a couple of action steps for you to take. Identify one key habit. And by the way, character skills developed consistently can become your character habits. So if they're done consistently, what is that one key habit or character skill that would make a big impact on your progress? Focus on only mastering that habit instead of worrying about the result, right? Enjoy the journey in developing and establishing that habit instead of worrying about when you're going to get to the finish line or how you're going to get there and so forth. Enjoy the moment. We hear so many people say all the time, stay in the moment. But it's hard to do that. But if we establish the habit of being able to find joy in the journey, we can certainly master that habit and turn it into one of our character skill habits, right? All right, the third one is fail forward. Oh, I love this. Every fall is a step forward. John Maxwell said in his book, sometimes we learn, or sometimes we win, sometimes and you hear other people say lose, but he says sometimes you learn. So that title, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn, gives us a breath of fresh air to be able to relax and know that we don't have to be perfect. The difference between average people and achieving people is their perception and their response to failure. So don't be afraid to fail. Remember what I told you about quarterback Nick Foles? He said, when you look at a struggle in your life, just know that, that's just the opportunity for your character to grow. And that's really just been the message, he said. Simple. Like if something's going on in your life and you're struggling, embrace it because you're growing. So, an action step for this is write down a recent failure or mistake you've experienced. We've all made mistakes, we've all had failures in our life, but write down the most recent one of the most recent ones that you've had. And instead of focusing on what went wrong, ask yourself, what did I learn or what could I learn from this? And then, how can I improve from this experience, right? That's true failure. That's failing forward because we're learning from that failure or that mistake. All right, number 4, this might surprise you. I told you we were just big kids as adults, right? We need to go back and learn how to play before perfection. In other words, we need to relearn how to play as an adult. Somewhere along the line, we stopped playing. As kids, we learned by playing, exploring, falling, getting back up without any fear. But as adults, we became so consumed with doing things right, comparing ourselves with others, that we stop allowing ourselves to experiment, fail, and enjoy the process. There's got to be joy in the journey. And if we play, we can bring that joy in the journey back again. So the action step here is to shift your focus, your mindset from perfection or from perfecting to playing. And then the fear of failure will begin to fade and your imposter syndrome will dissipate. And number 5, find a character coach. Probably never heard of one of those, have you? I'm a character coach. Those are the coaches that focus on helping others to learn to lead themselves with character first. Think about this. The best athletes, the best CEOs, the best leaders all have coaches to help them perform at their best. We all need a coach. And a character coach is someone who doesn't just help you with the technical and the people skills, but they help you develop your character, strengthen your self leadership, and guide you toward leading with integrity, courage, and confidence. In our gym, we use the skills of gymnastics as the technical skills, right? They've got to be able to do, for instance, a back handspring on floor or a back tuck or something like that. That's just a technical skill. But how they do that, how they persistently and consistently work at it every night. How many times did they fail before they got that successful tuck? Probably dozens in a lot of cases. But at the same time, how are they working with their teammates, supporting their teammates, encouraging their teammates? And how are they talking to themselves in the process, right? Just like my gymnast who said that would be a lie. Are they kind enough to themselves to give themselves room to fail and room to grow and to enjoy it? Basically, to play. And I emphasize play with my students and athletes all the time. They get really upset. Sometimes they have some tears, and I say, remember, you've got to play. Don't take it so seriously. Enjoy the journey, right? So the action step here that I want to encourage you with is to seek out a character coach, a mentor, or a trusted leader. It doesn't have to be someone that you're paying. Could be a friend. Could be someone you really respect who's willing to give you some of that time. A lot of coaches do get paid, and a lot of people do pay for coaches, but you don't have to find that. Remember, you're only as good as the 5 people that surround you, the closest 5 people that surround you, and that you interact with every single day. So, seeking out a character coach as a mentor or a trusted leader who will challenge and guide you in developing the kind of character driven leadership will allow you to defeat that imposter syndrome and lead with confidence. That's what we want. We want to lead with confidence and we want to beat down or defeat that imposter syndrome. Sometimes in the gym, we call those monsters or monkeys because those thoughts in our head just continue to swirl and talk to us about how we can't do that or that's not going to be possible or you could never have that happen. But remember, those 5 steps to being able to beat the imposter syndrome will give you the clarity, the confidence, and the joy to continue the journey. And remember, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about your systems and processes, not the goal. So, as a final step in this leadership, with character-driven leadership, with character skills as your primary focus, that's the front wheel on the tricycle, I want to explain the handlebars and the pedals on the trike, right? I gave you the front wheel, the two back wheels are the competence wheels, and the seat is a seat of courage. But what about the handlebar and the pedals? Well, interestingly enough, on a tricycle, the handlebars are connected to that front wheel, your character skill wheel. And the bottom where you're actually pedaling to get some momentum is connected to that front wheel as well, right? And so you get your direction in life and your momentum in life, whether you're going forward or backwards or just sitting still, from your pedaling with those pedals that are connected to the front wheel. So you get your momentum and direction from your character skill wheel. So, as a closing challenge, I just challenge you to find someone who believes in you and will help you develop your character so you can believe in yourself. Keep pedaling, keep playing, keep growing, and remember, we're not just human beings, we're human becomings. We need to find joy in the journey again. We must play because the world needs your leadership, and that's the truth. Trek on, team.